Say hello to the new Pixel 2 and Pixel 2 XL. This year, Google's back with another pair of Pixel phones, combining unique hardware design with a pure Android software experience. For these second-gen models, Google's mixing things up a little bit, giving us both a standard-shaped 5-inch phone, as well as an ultra-widescreen 6-inch option. Are all the changes this year successful? Maybe more importantly, can we expect another effortlessly powerful camera experience? I'm Stephen Shake with PhoneArena, here to answer those questions as I review the Pixel 2 and Pixel 2 XL. Google's been selling Android smartphones for years now, but in 2016 it took its hardware approach back to the drawing board as the long-standing Nexus line saw itself replaced by a pair of new Pixel-branded phones. Both first-gen Pixel models were eye-catching handsets, featuring unusual two-tone glass and metal finishes. In general, they were very well-received handsets, and won special acclaim for their relatively low-key, yet exceptionally versatile cameras. While they also suffered from some early glitches, Google's reliable software support stepped up to fix what it could. For round 2, Google's not straying too far from its initial formula, and while there's clearly a lot of modernization taking place, these new handsets are still unmistakably Pixels. The glass on the back has been toned down a little, but it's still quite prominent, and while the bodies here are once again crafted out of aluminum, this feels nothing like the original Pixel phones. The surface is treated such that it has an almost plastic or ceramic-like matte texture. Both handsets are nearly the same thickness, but the XL is understandably taller and wider. It's also got a different cross-section, thanks to the curved edges of its screen glass, while the smaller Pixel 2 is flat-faced. Thanks to the combination of the narrower width and broader edge, the smaller phone has a slightly more comfortable in-hand feel than the XL. By now, it feels like waterproofing for smartphones is the rule rather than the exception, and while the original Pixels weren't waterproof, the Pixel 2s come through with IP67 protection. That's not quite as robust as the many IP68 phones we've run into, but it's an appreciated upgrade for the Pixel all the same. Once again, Google looks to OLED screens for the Pixel's displays. A 5-inch 1080 by 1920 AMOLED panel on the Pixel 2, and a curved corner 6-inch 1440 by 2880 P-OLED screen on the Pixel 2 XL. While the smaller screen feels quite familiar, the XL is among the handful of phones this year introducing us to extra-wide 18 by 9 aspect ratio displays. Really, this feels a lot like the screen on the LG V30, which shouldn't be a shock considering LG is Google's manufacturer behind the Pixel 2 XL. And though it's certainly big and wide here, we don't get quite the same kind of edge-to-edge coverage we see on the V30 or on Samsung's widescreen Galaxy phones. Neither display is particularly bright. They're passable in sunlight, but almost every other flagship we've used in recent memory is brighter. And while there is a vivid color mode for that OLED pop, in standard mode, colors here are a little bit muted, especially on the red end of the spectrum. At least those OLED panels allow for a low-power ambient display mode to remind you of the time and display recent notifications. Google uses a Snapdragon 835 to power both Pixel 2s, the same chip we've seen at the heart of the vast majority of 2017 heavyweights. That's paired with 4 gigs of RAM, which proves to be plenty suitable here. Performance is strong on both handsets, but the smaller Pixel 2 scores slightly higher frame rates in some tests, presumably due to its lower res display. You can pick up a Pixel 2 or Pixel 2 XL with either 64GB of internal storage or 128 gigs for an extra $100. Just be warned, that's all the space you're going to get, as Google sticks with its anti-microSD policy for this year's handsets. No room to grow. As Google phones, the Pixel 2s run pure Android, and of course the latest, most feature-rich version, Android 8 Oreo. While a lot of the changes are behind the scenes, you will notice some tweaks to settings options, as well as expanded notification support with new dots that highlight the apps trying to communicate with you. Google's always given users plenty of ways to access its voice assistant, and in addition to saying OK Google or long pressing the home button, with the Pixel 2 phones you can now call up the Google Assistant by squeezing the phone's sides, just like on the HTC U11. Google calls this Active Edge. While we didn't love it on the U11, it's even less useful now, because all it does is trigger the assistant. There's no option to customize it to launch the app of your choice. While that may be a miss, a much more successful new feature is the arrival of front-facing stereo speakers on both phones. The Pixel 2s sound a little bit brighter than those on the XL, and are also slightly louder, but they're both pretty well done. Just remember that the volume rocker is below the power button here, so you're not accidentally turning the phone off when you mean to be cranking the volume. Perhaps part of the same HTC influence that gave us Active Edge, the Pixel 2 phones do away with their headphone jacks in favor of USB Type-C audio output. The phones come with an adapter for use with analog headphones, but don't arrive with USB headsets of their own. This sort of move is always going to be controversial, and it's not helped here by a glitchy implementation. We had issues getting the phones to recognize their adapters sometimes, and even had adapters get too hot to comfortably touch. We're hoping that software updates might be able to right this situation because it's a black mark on some otherwise well-done phones. In that same light, we ran into some glitches with voice calls, a function we don't often think much about since smartphones tend to so effortlessly excel at it. But just like with the iPhone 8, we had an issue with the Pixel 2 where we heard a repeating clicking noise while calling people. It didn't pop up on the XL, just the smaller Pixel 2, and we've got our fingers crossed that a software patch is in the works. These two phones have very different battery capacities, 2700 mAh on the Pixel 2 and 3520 for the Pixel 2 XL. But thanks to the larger, higher-res screen on the latter, we found battery life to actually be quite similar, with the smaller Pixel 2 getting about 8.5 hours of screen on time, while the larger XL came in a little under 9. Recharging times are decent for both phones, though understandably longer with the XL. But if you don't need a full charge, we found that even the XL could hit 90% battery capacity after being plugged in for under an hour. That, by the way, is the only way to refuel the Pixel 2 phones, with no support for wireless charging present. We've been saving the best for last, and the cameras on the Pixel 2 absolutely do not disappoint. The single 12.2 megapixel main camera doesn't sound like much in a world of dual camera systems, but it very much delivers. This year Google upgrades the hardware with optical stabilization, but the real magic is once again in its image processing, where Auto HDR+ support turns good pics into great ones. We also get a new portrait mode, even without a second camera for depth sensing. Instead, Google taps into dual pixel autofocus tech to find the background and then blur it out for a bokeh effect. The results can be alright, but don't be surprised if you see the phone miss the edges by a little bit and give you a too sharp border around your subject. Still, it's a solid effort. Maybe more impressively, you can do the same thing with the 8-megapixel Selfie Cam, even without dual pixel autofocus hardware. Instead, Google does it all in software, using face detection to isolate your subject from the background. Video recording works about as well as still photography, supporting resolutions up to 4K Ultra HD, and even allowing you to electronically stabilize video at full resolution. Changes to focus and exposure occur automatically during filming with no problem at all, and the only thing we're missing is any kind of 18:9 filming mode to take advantage of the Pixel 2 XL's super widescreen display during playback. It's little things like that that make the XL screen feel less like an integral part of the experience Google is trying to sell, and more like the company just didn't want to feel left out of this new trend. Both Pixel 2 handsets are largely well-done, successful phones. They're both powerful, attractively constructed, and once again deliver an amazing camera experience. Extras like waterproofing are nice, but some, like Active Edge, feel a little gimmicky, and while opinions will differ, the absence of smartphone staples like a headphone jack or microSD support may push some shoppers towards more full-featured alternatives. Of the two phones, the smaller Pixel 2 seems slightly more successful, being more comfortable to carry and use while delivering the very same functionality as the larger XL and costing $200 less, starting at just $650. While the XL is also a very good phone, you're paying a big premium for that ultra-widescreen display, a feature we've seen done better on some other handsets. Ultimately though, this all comes down to personal preference, and if you do have the cash and prefer a larger screen, the XL is not going to do you wrong. Maybe most importantly, both Pixel 2s feel like very worthy successors to the Pixel name. I'm Stephen Shank with PhoneArena. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for lots more smartphone coverage coming your way soon.